I guess this is going to be part 2. I apologize. I guess I made too many home videos of family and my stepson and all that. So I had to, transfer them. Anyway, I ran out of memory. Anyway, I don't think Trump understands the things that he is doing. I don't even think he understands what transgender means. Transgender does not just refer to people who are going through a transition. It refers to people who may never go through a transition, who may not even have the desire to go through a transition. It does not just refer to people who are getting surgeries and treatments to transition. Transgender is, I've seen a lot of terms be overshadowed by other terms. Back whenever I was a kid, bisexual just meant you were attracted to both genders. Now there's new words and new terms, and there's always a bunch of kids that want to redefine something. I'm sorry, but there's nothing new under the sun. And you can be defined by several different words. I just go with the old way of doing it. Bisexual just means you're attracted to both genders. It doesn't mean anything else. Because nothing else needs to be labeled. It's just a general thing. The world does not need to know. And no, it doesn't actually specify whether that person likes to dress as a man or a woman or anything like that. I got absolute hell because it was like, oh, you're this because you'll date people that do that. And I was like, no. People are people to me, and I won't do all this other stuff. I just don't care if somebody feels like they're a man or a woman. I feel like That's another reason I stayed away from the community. Because you get into bisexual and people like that, and I understand why there's that insecurity there, because back in my day, the quickest way to be told you didn't belong there was to say you were bisexual. Like, how dare you be attracted to both genders? Like, you have more options. Why are you here? No, not necessarily. Not everybody of those genders is your type. You're not going to physically be attracted to everything with a dick or vagina. It's just not gonna happen. I don't think the president understands, though. Someone who's transgender, it doesn't just refer to people going through the surgeries. It refers to someone. It basically technically refers to the entire community. Transgender means that you transcend gender. It refers to people going through the process of changing their gender, yes, but it also refers to people who simply feel they don't fit what they were born. Their gender that they were born is not them. Whenever you feel like there's a piece missing, you physically feel like there should be something there, but it's not. Kind of like someone who lost a limb and they know something should be there, and they feel like something should be there, but it's not. Except I'm not trying to be insensitive to people who have lost limbs. It's just the closest thing I know to describe it. So I apologize if I offend anyone with that. There's just no other way I know to describe it. And that's a feeling I deal with every day and have dealt with every day. But I don't feel like I should have been born a man. I feel like I should have been born with both. I don't really like to talk about it because of how that blew up in my face whenever I was younger. There are people that are born with this feeling like their entire body is wrong, though. And that's what it means. It means that you're born in a body that feels wrong. It's the wrong gender, or it's should be both, but it's only one. That's transgender. It literally means that you transcend gender. Transgender people are not just people going through the transition. Technically speaking, every gay person is also considered transgender. Every lesbian is considered transgender. It's a very broad meaning. I know what people think of whenever they hear it is often people who are going through the transition, but that's not what it means. It can mean that, but it also means a lot of other things too. So banning transgender people from the military, it means someone like me, who will never undergo the transition, cannot serve in the military. Whether I'm physically fit to do so or not, no matter which bathroom I use. Whether I accept the legality of being female or not, regardless of how I am inside. It means that he has barred people like me. And I'm not sure he realizes that. I'm not sure that's what our president intends. I don't even think he's taken his head out of his ass long enough to even do his research. I'm not even sure the president knows how to do research. I think his head is so far up his ass into his own interests and the interests of his very rich allies, he hasn't taken the time to realize that most of this country is made up of people who don't belong to the rich, who could never pay to go to one of his parties. Like, he was out here in Phoenix, but the price to get in was more than our rent. If you were not rich or something along those lines, you weren't getting in there. Trump has never shown care for the fact that 90% of this country, actually more than that, more than 90%, more like only 1% can... He doesn't seem to realize that he's representing and surrounding himself with a very small group, and that majority of this country cannot and will not ever get close to him. I don't think he really comprehends that the interests of the few are not what is supposed to be what he represents. He is supposed to represent the people as a whole. And whenever the people do not stand united, he is supposed to represent majority, not himself, not his own interests, not even his family. I mean, as a father, he can represent his family, but as a president, he is supposed to represent this country. Not like our last president understood that either. But then again, our last president got away with things that have had previous presidents impeached just for planning. They didn't even actually do them. And he did that because he used the race card for everybody and everything, and nobody wanted to be called a racist. I hate to say it, but Arpaio is a racist. But he also causes problems. A lot of problems. For people regardless of the color of your skin. He's part of the reason CPS in our state is as bad as it is. Why they think that they can get away with breaking all these laws. Because his officers do not enforce them. Did not enforce the law. He's been sheriff since I was a child. He became sheriff when I was a kid. Okay? At first, people loved him. And I'll admit, he actually did a good job at first. But over time, well, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts, absolutely. He became very corrupt, and he did a lot of horrible things. I mean, it is for this very reason we have term limits on the presidency. even then, I feel like 8 years is too much. There's too much damage that can be done in 8 years. Too much corruption that can happen. I feel like 4 years should be enough. And that you shouldn't be able to go for a second term unless there's extenuating circumstances. But I don't make the laws. None of us down here, none of us little people actually make the laws. You have to become a lawmaker for that. Now, originally, this was not how our country was run. This was added later. Originally, anyone could make a law. That is not actually how it works now. There is a whole process to that, and becoming someone who is allowed to do that. Not just anyone on the street can make a law. You have to present it to someone who can do that now. It used to be, however, that people just wrote a law and they submitted it to be voted in. Now we have committees of lawmakers. The process has changed, and it's put a wall between people and government. Our government has become not our voice, but a voice against us. And that needs to change. Our president needs to hear us whenever we say, don't ban transgender people from the military. Reverse this decision. It's a really stupid and exceedingly ignorant thing to do. I mean, he doesn't even understand what it is. Hell, half the community doesn't even understand what it is. There's so much that gets passed around by people who think that they know things, and it goes around and around until you get a bunch of kids out there who think they know something, and they really don't. And then they pass this on to other people who are grasping for answers, and you get the same thing. And that is how misconceptions are born and accepted. So, I personally right now get the feeling that our president doesn't care about anybody but himself. And I did have some hopes. I mean, he's chauvinistic, kind of looks down on women, thinks they're disgusting because he doesn't understand them, nor does he bother to understand them. Which makes him disgusting, frankly. Because you cannot represent something you do not understand. And he needs to work to understand so that he can do that. But I'm not seeing that here. I'm seeing ignorance. I mean, I never liked Trump in the first place. I admit that. I was just kind of in a place anything but Hillary. Because I've actually looked at her stuff. I mean, the only plus sides I saw to Trump is that, yes, he is a bigoted asshole, he is ignorant, but he is honest about it. He says, I'm flawed. I made a mistake. Politicians typically don't do that unless they're vying for some sort of approval rating. He is an unapologetic asshole. And, I guess I want to see proof of this for all to see, but, as far as he has claimed, he's giving back his paycheck for being president, which would earn kudos in my book, because originally our public servants were called public servants for a reason, because they were unpaid. No public office was paid in the beginning. It's actually a relatively recent addition to our government as far as how long since our country has been founded to now. It's probably only been about, the last 100 years or so, maybe? Give or take. It's not something that our country was founded on, It was something that you held a real job while you held an office. That office was not your job. It was your responsibility, a responsibility you chose to take up on top of having a normal life. That was something that kept people humble and in touch with people, because it was supposed to be the people's government, not a government separate from the people, and that's what it's become. These people don't get real jobs. They get in government so they don't have to get real jobs. They get paid more money than most of us will ever see in our lives. Okay. And they take that out of our taxes. That's how our government works right now. It's not how it's supposed to work. It needs some fixing. And I don't think it's gonna get fixed overnight. I think it can get fixed if people are aware of how far it's gone away from the intentions of it. But I don't think it'll happen overnight. Some ideas have been ingrained to an extent. It actually doesn't take long, because an entire generation can formulate ideas and opinions and follow an example in 8 years. An entire generation can grow up knowing nothing else because they weren't old enough to remember what came before, really, or have been concerned with it. Because you're not really concerned with that stuff until, there's only a certain age where you can even, pop out of your bubble, I guess, as a kid, and perceive something larger. It's part of child development, but 8 years is long enough to establish ideas, to change a nation, either in the wrong direction or the right direction. But the problem is nobody ever agrees what the right direction is. There's always someone willing to do something that's too far, that crosses the line. And 8 years is long enough for someone to become wholly and completely corrupt. There are many offices like sheriff that do not have term limits. Raphael, I think he was in that office for damn near 20 years. I'm only 28 years old. But I don't remember ever having a sheriff that wasn't him. I don't remember there ever being a sheriff that wasn't him. This new sheriff? I don't know anything about him. I don't know what kind of sheriff he's going to be. I don't know if he cares about enforcing the law, which a sheriff is supposed to do. I reserve judgment. Whatever he does or doesn't do, that speaks more than pretty words ever could. Actions speak louder than words. So, that's something I've never understood. Why do people just accept all these pretty words from these politicians? Their actions show that they don't even mean them. So why would you keep believing them? Just screams idiot to me. I'm sorry, but it just screams idiot to me. If you know they're lying out of their ass, why the hell do you take it seriously? We all know if a politician's mouth is open, they're lying. There's a reason why. There's an actual contest somewhere, I forget where they have a lying contest. It's a contest about lying. How well you can do it. Lawyers and politicians are not allowed to enter because it's basically believed they're too good at it. They do this for a living, so they're too good at it. politician is that way because they're out for their own interests, not because they represent a people. And this was something our country was founded on getting away from, not going towards. It's selfish people who want more personal power over everyone else that have pushed for it to become this way, and ignorance of what we can do about it that has caused us to get to this point where most people are so complacent about it. So, a president, like any president, is a human being. But his decision did not come with the support of the people. It came with the support of a very small minority, which he surrounds himself with and associates himself with readily, and doesn't seem to realize is vastly outnumbered, and he is not supposed to represent the minority of people. He's not supposed to only represent those who have the money to scratch his ego or whatever. He is supposed to represent everyone, from the lowest of the low all the way on up. Everyone. And if he fails to do so, he fails at being president. He wouldn't be the only one. Obama was horrible. He was great at playing it up like he represented and publishing false stats. I mean, because if you actually went and did your research and looked at the numbers, there were actually less people with jobs, not more. He would only publish the stats and kind of exaggerate them whenever it fluctuated. He wouldn't tell you it went down more than it went up before it went up. He wouldn't tell you that this was a steady decline. He would butcher it. Cut out anything that wasn't favorable. Frankly, he was a horrible president. And I'm tired of hearing from, because most of my family are Democrats, they have this mindset that Republicans are for rich people and Democrats for poor people. An us versus them sort of mentality. But none of them can tell you what those parties represent beyond that. They actually don't represent that at all. Republicans are supposed to stand for, I say supposed to because some of them seem more Democrat than Republican, because Republicans stand for smaller government, more personal freedoms, less government control over those personal freedoms. Democrats stand for big government controlling small details of your lives. Like, a democratic value, for example, would be sex laws. Laws against which you can do in the bedroom. A Republican value would be, no, sorry, that's not my business. That's not the government's business. You can suck that dick if you want to. In Arizona, it's actually still on the books that it's illegal to have oral sex. So, if you're sucking that dick, you're breaking the law. I don't even... As far as I'm concerned, that's not the government's business. That is a Republican value. The problem is, a lot of people don't even seem to understand the difference. Republican values are supposed to be smaller government, less government control, because a smaller government is easier to control. It is easier to root out corruption before it gets too bad, or root it out if it is bad, for whatever reason. The bigger government is, the more corrupt it becomes. The more control it has, the more corrupt it becomes, because power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. Our government was set up so that the government would be an extension of the people, part of the people, representative of the people. There was never this wall between people and the government that there is now. I actually found out talking to people who are in other countries that they actually refer to our country as more of an aristocracy. Where, sort of like that, where the few control the many. Where a few people with a lot of power and a lot of money tell everyone else what to do. Because in practice, that's what it's become more than anything else. A few people get this thing in their heads, and they happen to have money, so they walk all over everyone else. There's been a few other things that it's been called, like Obama was called communist because he wants to take to give. And I hate to say it, but he was horrible. Not just... He victimized the very people he claimed to help. He was great at speaking, very charismatic. But as far as how effective he was at actually doing anything that he promised to do, first of all, he didn't even bother to try. In fact, he blatantly contradicted himself many, many times. The only good thing I can say about Trump right now is that he's never pretended that he's not an asshole. He's even got this guy who tells everyone what he's doing, what he intends to do. So it's not like it was ever a secret what he intended to do. The problem is he doesn't seem to want to listen. Whenever people tell him this is a bad idea, here's why it's a bad idea. This man did a lot of bad things, the least of which was being a fucking racist and discriminating against people. This man helped contribute to the state of my state, to many of the horrible things that go on here. This man is part of the reason why the judge who judged my family, who judged me as a parent, without there being any actual evidence against me as a parent, based on the fact of Future, who was able to publicly proclaim in a training video on the state website that is still floating around YouTube. Apparently they made it not so public anymore after it started doing that, but it's still out there. And she cares about funding consequences. She advises judge and social workers to make decisions that are against the law, to violate tenets that are the very foundation of what a judge is supposed to do. She should be removed from the bench. Any judge who ever supports those ideals should be removed from the bench because it violates everything a judge is supposed to be and do. Under Sheriff Joe Arpaio, he allowed that. He didn't just allow it. At one point, he prevented people from doing anything about it. Until people just got so used to it, they stopped trying to fight it. People still try and fight it, but there's so many people who are afraid of doing it publicly. There was a protest a couple months ago. Someone was speaking and the police took her off. She had a permit and everything. And there were speakers and they shut the whole thing down. Because they were publicly pointing out what was wrong with things and talking about some of the things that went on. Because it wasn't supporting it. That's not free speech. That is violation of free speech. That's what became the norm under Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Releasing him is just... frankly, I can't say what I feel like saying because as a pacifist, if someone actually did it, I could not live with myself. All I can say is that there are many things Sheriff Joe Arpaio deserves, none of which are to walk free. And I think I'm going to end this on that. Once again, this is Luna. Thanks for watching. I guess have a blessed and just have a blessed day or evening or whatever. Bye. Stupid hair.